let me ask you some flashcard questions. So, like, let's say you're a manager at a coffee house franchise, like similar to a Starbucks or whatever, and you work very hard, but the male executives at your office always ask you casually, like sexually harassy kind of questions, and they touch your hand, they touch your leg, they touch your arm, they ask you inappropriate things, and you work there for like 10 years, okay?
Hmm.
But you never spoke out against it because you don't like to cause trouble. And as a result, all the other female managers at the company call you a pushover. What do you do?
First, I need to ask, are the people harassing me attractive?
No.
Ah, because that would be the solution for all of it.
Oh my God.
I know life is really a bitch. But usually, if like people are telling me I'm a pushover, I'm not going to push back. Like, I'm going to keep pushing. Oh, like,
Why?
well, it feels like that's my character. I'm like,
Okay, so you want to keep a consistent character.
maybe I just like I should walk on like a slippery slope, like a street that is a bit like slippery, and then I walk in and I flip over and I bump my head in the floor on the floor, and then I just change my personality and I'm like, fuck you, assholes, and then I go and I
Okay, okay, okay. So when you said slippery slope, you meant like a literal slippery slope, like on
yeah,
a
yeah,
hill, and you want to do like this old rom-com kind of trope where you bump your head and you
and then I
change
change, and then I go
personalities.
to grab that lawyer. What is the lawyer that always like takes care of all the like sexual harassed women in the US?
Okay.
That
I
woman,
don't know.
yeah,
Oh, okay,
she's
yeah.
famous.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I will. I don't remember her name. I will grab her, and we'll be like, I will like do a thing. I will be like, this company's horrible. And I will do that
Yeah.
on TV, and then bam, I own the company.
So, your solution is to fall on your head. Okay, great. All right, so you're the same coffee house franchise manager lady,
Mhm.
and you've been in a relationship with a man for a year now. But lately, he's been showing signs of boredom, and he's not that excited to see you anymore. He doesn't want to go on any trips with you. And then you find out that he's been two-timing you with some other chick. And that chick turns out to be a colleague of yours from work, and she's one of the bitches who calls you a pushover. What do you do?
What do? I don't know. I feel like what I feel like women always get the blame for the guys making a bad decision. I feel like it's not Christina's fault, but she will get some.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if I still want the guy back because he doesn't care. But I have a thing for guys that don't care. So maybe I'm still very much in love with him. So
Oh.
I will cut Christina. I will cut her.
You will cut that
Yeah,
bitch.
I will cut her.
All right, so you're the same manager lady, all right? And you have a childhood best friend. Okay, you've known since you were children. She's the same age as you. She has a younger brother who is the same age as your younger brother, and they're best friends. And you guys are like family. Your parents know them, your parents adore them. And then one day you find yourself attracted to your best friend's younger brother. And he likes you too.
Of course he does.
Meanwhile, your best friend, your parents, your brother, everybody thinks of one another as family. What do you do?
Well, the important thing to remember in this case, we're not family. We can fuck. It's fine. um, but we will keep it a secret because that's sexy. um,
So the whole time you're together, you just be a secret?
yeah, I'll be like, could you help me with the groceries? Let's go to the supermarket. Wink, wink. And we fuck in the alley or something.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he's young. He likes to do that. I'm up
Oh
for
my
it.
God.
No, what?
All right. Let's say your cell phone breaks and your cell phone plan was written under your ex-boyfriend's name. And because your phone broke, you need to go to the mobile store with your ex, but your ex is still very much hung up on you. Okay. And so I know it's fucked up because he's the one that was bored by you in the first place. But anyway, so your ex boyfriend gets you in his car, but instead of driving to the cell phone place, He starts driving down a highway very fast and threatens to die together. And you don't have a phone, you don't have anything, you're trapped. What do you do?
I will do the big. You're being silly. Because that's how women dissipate crazy people. I will be.
The big "you're being
Oh
silly"?
my god,
It's that big?
you're being so silly, and then I will poop.
It's so fucking sad.
And then we'll be like, hey, why don't we like listen to some records? And like we just put music, and I will be like, I'm kind of hungry. Let's go to McDonald's or something. Um, or Taco Bell.
That is so the kinda answer you would give. Oh my god. "I'm kinda hungry. Let's go to McDonald's or something." Meanwhile, you're being fucking kidnapped. You're being kidnapped by your crazy ex-boyfriend, and you're like, "Oh, you're being so silly. Let's go to McDonald's."
Okay, but how I see it is like I can get a free meal from this. It's important.
And of all the meals, you're gonna choose McDonald's.
Yeah, if it's going to be a trash day, it's going to be a trash day. What can you? Where should I go? I don't know. A fancy place? I don't think he will. I think he's an asshole. He's not going to take me to a nice place. He wants to kill me. He will be
Yeah,
like, "Man,
when he wants to murder you, he's not gonna take you to any other place but McDonald's. That's the best you can ask for.
the Cheesecake Factory." I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I would love to go to the Cheesecake Factory as my last meal. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you can see the
Yeah.
calories. That's not good. That's not good.
They have Cheesecake Factory in Berlin?
No,
Oh,
that's the thing. You
okay.
tell him a restaurant doesn't exist, and we just like look for it until he gets tired.
That's a better
He's
strategy.
like,
Yes.
you know what? I'm tired. I'm going to take you home. Let's keep this going another day. Like, okay.
Yeah, we'll try again tomorrow.
Sure.
We'll try to die together again tomorrow. Alright, so you're in love with your best friend's younger brother, okay? But your status-obsessed mother, there's always one. She's so obsessed with it. She completely rejects him, okay? And she used to be like another mother to your boyfriend and your best friend because you guys are dating. She's saying all these horrible things to your friend and your boyfriend, and your mother starts showing up at your best friend's workplace and your boyfriend's house to convince them to break up. What do you do?
What do I? It's my mom. Okay, I will try to set her up with someone. So because this is what happens when mothers don't get laid,
Oh god.
they have to bother your life. So you need to give them something. Or I will give them. What cats do to play with, like the little, like, what's the name of that? That thing.
A cat toy?
No, no, no. The thing that you do like a sweater. What's the name of this? Wool, like the thing that you.
Oh, yeah, a spool of wool, a
Yes,
string of
yes. I will give her that, and I will be
okay.
like, "Mom, I really need a sweater," and maybe that keeps her busy.
Wow. I love how, misogynistic your responses are.
I'm pretty sure I'm hitting all the right marks.
And she just doubles down on the misogyny. Final question. So, you find out that your boyfriend took a job in the United States without consulting you, and then he asks you to quit your job and move to the United States with him. What do you do?
What state?
Let's say New York.
Huh, no.
No.
Well, I don't know. I want to go to the ocean. I don't want to go to New York. It's a city. I saw one time a rat there, and I think that, okay, I will give you a feminist answer. No, I'm not going.
Okay. Why?
Because
You can't think of anything because 'cause you're so misogynistic. You wanna
you
go.
know that my head was like, but you love him so much. Yeah, but then I will try to get me another boo boo. I think I will try to get my life. I will try to rip him off.
Oh my god. Wait, so you're gonna go to New York with him and then leave him and then find another man in New York?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And you know
Like, you're
what? I think I will start stand up comedy.
Jesus. It's nice talking to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome to K-Drama School. I'm your host, Grace Jung, and class is now in session. So today I'm going to talk about the show Something in the Rain. It's a 2018 drama that came out in the spring. It also came out the same year that the Me Too Korea movement was like full on happening. The show is written by Kim Eun and it's directed by An Pan-seok. The Korean title of Something in the Rain is 밥 잘 사주는 예쁜 누나, or it could also be translated as the pretty Nuna who buys meals very often. If you don't know what Nuna means, it's how a younger male would address an older female between family and friends. I believe that this is Kim Eun's debut work. I could be wrong, but I believe it's her debut work because it's very hard to find information on this particular writer, and that could only mean that she's fairly new. But what an amazing debut. I thought this show was pretty much perfect. Yeah, it's very well written. The casting is supreme. Everybody's amazing on the show. The chemistry between Jung Hae-in and Son Ye-jin is like on point. Yeah, it's to the point where a friend of mine, I don't know how to, I don't want to say his name, but he's let's say he's a gay libertarian living in New York. He's obsessed with Son Ye-jin and Jung Hae-in, and he wants them to be dating in real life because he just finished watching the show. But as we all know, Son Ye-jin is dating Hyunbin. All right, so there you go. I know that I said that Son Ye-jin and Hyunbin also have amazing chemistry on television, and that is true. All right, but it's also the case with Jung Hae-in and Son Ye-jin. All right, she's just that good of an actress. I guess Hyunbin and Jung Hae-in are also good actors. You know what I mean? Like if they could bring that kind of chemistry, but also chemistry, it can't be. It's not something you could always predict. It's not something you have control over. It's just there. If it's there, it's there. If it's not there, it's not there. Like I saw Son Ye-jin in another show, and she and her opposite co-star, male co-star, like they had zero chemistry. You know, Jung Hae-in is an interesting actor. He started out somewhat late relative to the others in the industry. He is a late bloomer, so he began his career in his like mid-20s, I think. But what a great looking face. You know, if you got a face like that, you have a good shot in the industry. And he's got this boyish, like boy crush quality to him. You know, he's like very reminiscent of like Ryan Gosling, you know, this eternal man boy type, which is very attractive to many people. And the director of this show is An Pan-seok. He directed another show about an older woman romantically involved with a younger man. That show is called Secret Affair, starring Yoo Ah-in and Kim Hye. That show is honestly like it wasn't that big of a scandal to me. I don't know. I guess I saw like too many other. I don't know. Like, yeah. Have you seen that movie Notes on a Scandal? Like, I read the book, I saw the film, so like when I saw this show, I was like, oh, like I wasn't that phased by it. When I saw Something in the Rain, I just figured that An Pan-seok had a thing for older women and younger men. But I think his directorial choices are more about finding screenplays that are radically transgressive, especially from the woman's perspective, right? I mean, that, you know, you would have to credit the female writers of these kinds of TV shows. But I think, you know, An Pan-seok's choices as a director, I think they do kind of show that side as well. I think he enhances it. He's a very stylistic director, I would say. Because like when I was watching this, I was just like very struck by the realist style of it. You know what I'm saying? Like the screenplay is also somewhat realist in tone, but you know he could have made different choices as a director and like played up certain aspects. But this is a very, how do you say, very quiet kind of TV show, very subtle, very nuanced. Nothing is, you know, you don't have too many over the top moments, really. But of course, you need some over the top moments here and there, and I'll talk about that soon. Something in the Rain is about a young woman named China. She works at a coffee franchise, and she is from a middle class family, very middle class. And her father is a newly retired man, and her mom is a house mom, but she's very concerned with upward social mobility for her children. The Wikipedia page for Something in the Rain has this list of taboos, and there are no citations. It's just somebody went in there and wrote them out. One of the taboos that's listed is dating taboos. And I'm going to say something right now. An older woman with a younger man in Korea is absolutely not a taboo in Korea. All right. In fact, younger men, older women, like that was a trend, starting like over 10 years ago. Like since over a decade ago, that was a trend. So I'm not sure why this taboo is listed here. It's inaccurate. When it comes to trendiness and coolness, Korea will give anything. They'll give away its left nut to be a part of it or become a trendsetter themselves. All right. But it was taboo at one point in time for a younger man and an older woman to pursue a romantic relationship. It was looked down upon because like there was this I don't know, there was this like mentality that like a man should be older to command a woman's respect and have this hierarchical Confucian patriarchal social order or whatever the fuck. But that all kind of disintegrated. I saw this show called See and See Again or Pogo to Pogo like years ago. That was a long TV drama that was popular in the 90s. And in that show there was a younger man dating an older woman, and that was like the way the show framed it. It was like so unbelievable, so unacceptable. The couple ultimately broke up because the parents just couldn't accept this relationship. But like I said, that was in the 90s, and since the early 2000s, like this radically changed. I don't know what set it off. Probably a celebrity who was just like, I don't care, I love him, he loves me. But yeah, it's you see it everywhere today. So I wouldn't call this a taboo in Korea today. It's definitely not. But a taboo that was not listed on the Wikipedia page is the incest taboo, right? Like Junhee and Kyungsun are brother and sister, and Kyungsun is China's best friend since childhood, right? And their parents, Junhee and Kyungsun's parents and China's parents, they all knew one another. They were family friends. But after Junhee and Kyungsun's mother died and their father abandoned them to pursue a new family, China's parents helped them out a lot by bringing them panchan, being there for them whenever they could. They would even say to them, like, you guys are like my other children. So the taboo, this incest taboo, is really about shattering this family illusion, the illusion that between friends a kinship can be established, right? But that kinship had to remain platonic. You couldn't go beyond that boundary. And this is what this couple is doing. Junhee, the way that the family understood it, they saw Junhee as a younger brother to China. No different. They kept saying it, right? But of course, there's no blood mixing there, right? Ultimately, he's not family, right? And China's younger brother is also good friends with Junhee because they're the same age. So, like, yeah, they had to sort of break the existing understanding of the relationship. And that's where this incest taboo comes in. They also know what China's mother is like, right? China's mom on Something in the Rain is played by Kim Mi-yeon, and the extremity of the mother's status obsession is unbelievably toxic. And when I posted a clip with Son Ye-jin and Kim Mi-yeon playing mother and daughter on the show, I posted it on TikTok and Instagram. Some people commented and said how much they hate the mom. They were like, I hate the mom on the show. And I felt like China's mother was crucial to this program for not only conflict purposes and keeping the story moving forward, but also to reflect just how extreme Korea's misogyny is, as well as the cruelty of capitalism. In that regard, China's mother as a character she's invaluable to this program. She is absolutely necessary. China's mom wants China to marry a man who has good income, a good family, meaning a family with titles, like successful people who are doctors, people who graduated Seoul National, blah, 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 the works. And she feels like the only way for her daughter to live a stable and happy life is to marry into a family like this. And this rationale behind this thinking makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like this kind of obsession stems from her own sense of powerlessness in a society that disrespects women time and time again and uses men, only men, as agents of power in that society. So if you think about it, China's mom as a character is very much a part of the feminist critique that this show has. In fact, she is like the heart of that critique. And of course, Gina goes through her own challenges working at this coffee franchise, where in the office, everybody regards her as the quote unquote tambourine girl. Because whenever they go to Hueshik meaning, it's like the company dinner, and after company dinner, they all get drunk and they go to a karaoke bar, right? And in places like that, in those settings, men are always sexually harassing the women, the subordinate women, calling them over, telling them, pour me a drink, flip the meat over, while they're sitting there, they grope them. Yeah, it's like, it happens all the time, right? Like when they're at karaoke bars, like they want to sing and dance a little close to the women. A Hishik setting, according to this show, is an excuse for men to harass women. Another theme of taboo that the Wikipedia page on Something in the Rain mentions is familial taboo. People without parents seen as unfit, quote unquote, for marriage. This requires some explanation, okay? I'm not sure if people without parents are seen as unfit for marriage, per se, in Korean society. I think it goes a little bit more beyond that. People without parents, or orphans, or quote unquote, people who come from quote unquote a broken home, are seen as defective in that culture and society. It's seen as a sort of social disability. There's this really great book on disability in South Korea called Curative Violence, written by Eun Kim. And Kim goes into how South Korea saw itself as a disabled nation right after colonization and the Civil War and all the poverty plaguing the country. But once the country stabilized politically and economically, all the efforts went into quote unquote curing any visibly disabled people. Okay. The nation was obsessed with the need to be quote unquote perfect or appear quote unquote flawless. And this need stems from trauma and insecurity, seeing as South Korea was incredibly unstable not too far long ago. And they want to erase this memory, erase this, it's like that out damn spot kind of scenario, they want to just erase any form of disability, right? And that need feels very urgent to them. So this is why people with disabilities in Korea suffer a lot of discrimination, and many people with disability, the activists of disability communities, say that all therapy that is offered in Korea is incredibly microaggressive and biased because they all emphasize improvement, right? Improvement therapy, rather than just accepting people with disabilities for who they are. And that is the problem here too. That sort of bias that China's mother has, while saying that Chuni is unacceptable as a son-in-law because he comes from a family with a broken home, with a dead mother and a philandering father. And it doesn't really make any sense, right? Again, this is an absurd sort of paranoia because Chun-hee is not his father, right? But yeah, it has to. I think this kind of bias or discrimination stems from the whole paranoia over disability or being seen as somebody with a disability or whatever. So this is, in some sense, you could look at the way China's mom reacts to her daughter dating Chun-hee, who comes from, again, quote unquote, a broken home. You could see that as an extension of ableism. I don't know if that works. Maybe that works. Maybe that doesn't, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway. I think An Pan-seok likes working with an ensemble cast. The writer of this show, Ki-moon, she also wrote One Spring Night, which came out not too long after the success of Something in the Rain. And they used pretty much the same exact people. The only person they swapped out was Son Ye-jin for another actress. But Chung Hee-in is in it. Like the moms and dads, like everybody is reinserted back into One Spring Night. They also like reused Rachel Yamagata's music for the soundtrack, and I love the the tone, the style and tone of Something in the Rain, the high emphasis on realism. And this is something I'm working on currently as a paper. So once I write the paper, I don't know, you guys can read it at some point. Um, but I talk about some of it with today's guest. Today's guest is Ji-yoon An. She is a professor. I mean, she was one of the few people that I saw at the Korean Screen Cultures conference a couple years ago. She's one of the very few people who was writing about Korean dramas, and I found it very refreshing because everybody else at that conference were focusing on cinema. And she wrote this really great paper, this article that's in anthology, I suppose. But she essentially wrote about genre hybridity in K dramas and sort of the, I don't know, like the sci-fi stuff, the fantasy stuff, and like the significance of that and in the Korean context. So if you want to check that out, it's out there. She went to, I believe, University of Cambridge, got her PhD in East Asian Studies. She studied film and media before that, though, for her master's. And yeah, I mean, she's a Korean London diaspora, and she's like, I think she's the only one I know, like the only English Korean that I know. I only know Korean Americans besides. But yeah, her research is very, very interesting. She's a lot of fun to talk to. Um, I love her work, and she's a big fan of this show. So yeah, we talk about the show and a bunch of other things. So yeah, get into it.
Amazing that you do this. You're so active. I mean, I said this before, but you do so many things. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. It's to pass the time, you know? It's to pass life.
Most people pass the time just watching TV, you know?
Oh, I do that a lot too, trust me. I watch a lot of TV. So like did your parents immigrate there? Did you immigrate there? Were you born in the UK? Like,
I
what's your
was
story?
born in Korea,
Mm-hmm.
and my we have a really typical kind of British Korean history. So
Mm,
unlike the US, the history is a bit shorter, right?
okay.
So most British Koreans you'll meet are like us, where the parents got sent over as 주재원 from a company, right?
Ah,
Like their fathers were working for a
yeah,
company, they got sent over, and then
sure.
they decided to stay. So
Mm,
that's what happened with my case. Most of the people who came to UK in the 90s have that storyline.
mm,
And I think that's when you really get a big kind of Korean population.
mm-hmm,
Before 90s, it's going to be the rare kind of people who were there for studying or
mm-hmm,
were already in Europe somehow for work and they somehow, decided to settle down in the UK, etc. So it's not, you don't see many of those families.
mm-hmm.
But my husband's family is actually one of those families. So his uncle and aunt had been living in like Europe for a while. And so they're like one of, I think, quite an early immigrant, you would say, from the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
late 70s. We
Yeah.
came in the 90s and I've been in England, yeah, since then. And then my dad kind of started his own business. So he decided to stay behind, not go back to
Yeah.
Korea, etc.
That's cool. What part of the UK did you grow up in?
In London, again, very typical. So most Korean, like British Koreans you'll meet are
Yeah.
all from London,
Oh,
like
nice.
mostly, and they're all from like this one little suburban town in London called New
Really?
Malden. They
Oh,
all like
wow.
gather there because, like I said, they were all 주재원s, right?
Ah, so
So the
they had their.
companies bought their houses there because that
I
was a cheap place in
see.
London originally. So that's where
Ah,
people gathered, and then when they decided to stay behind, they
yeah,
looked around the area. So that's where the
sure.
supermarket and kind of K Town grew.
Nice. That's amazing. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that. I love that because in the US, like Koreans are quite scattered, you know.
yeah.
Although they are like concentrated on the coasts, like California and New
Hmm.
York, you would still find them in like the Midwest, you know, like Indiana
Hmm.
and like Minnesota, Wisconsin. Like you would find pockets of Koreans like scattered across the United
Hmm.
States. And when I encounter them, like Texan Koreans, you know, I'm like,
Oh,
whoa,
there are loads of Texan Koreans,
yeah,
right? I met a few at conferences.
yeah. I'm just
Um,
like, wow,
yeah.
Texas, you know. But oh, that's cool.
And I'm so surprised because they often have a long history. So like they're like
Hmm.
third generation or something. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, especially in like
Yeah.
Hawaii, it's
Mm.
like many generations of Hawaiian Koreans. I guess since like Lee Seung-man, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
since like he was
Oh yeah,
exiled over there.
I saw this brilliant documentary. I don't know if you saw it
Huh.
called Heronimo,
Heronimo,
about
okay.
Korean Cubans.
Oh,
Um, about this one Korean Cuban who was like really high up in the Cuban kind of Communist Party,
oh my
um,
God.
and about how his family like ended up in Cuba. They were sent to Hawaii, like Mexico. It's about that immigration
Was he
before, like,
from the north?
several. Um, I mean, it's he was born in Cuba, so I think his
Oh, he's a
father was the one who
born
moved to
Cuban.
Cuba.
Oh,
But
that's
it's we're talking
amazing.
like early 1900s, so it's really, really fascinating
Oh, so
history.
it's like
And it's like
before modern.
fourth,
Yeah.
fifth generation now, Cuban Korean
Oh,
family, and they
wow.
he's already died, the protagonist of this
Sure.
protagonist, would you say?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
really fascinating.
That
Yeah.
is really fascinating. That's
Yeah, I
amazing.
just didn't know, right? That
Yeah,
there are
Korean
Koreans in
Cubans.
Cuba.
Who
And then
knew?
that he was really like high up in the Cuban like Communist
It's
Party,
what I'm saying.
you know?
Koreans get around, you know?
Yeah, like he's got photos with the Che Guevara. I'm like, what?
That's amazing. No, I
What is
think
going on?
it's because Korea is like a peninsula and they could just hop on a boat and just go places,
Mm.
maybe. Maybe that's how they got
Yeah.
around or
They
um
were cheap laborers, right? During the
sure.
colonial times and all
Yes.
this.
Yes. Laboring, if not slaving away.
Yeah.
Yeah. For
I think
the
they actually, in the documentary, they said we were slaves. That's
yeah.
like the words they
Yeah,
use.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
were sold as slaves. We were
Yeah.
treated as
Yeah.
slaves.
Koreans have always
Fascinating.
had a little bit of that enslavement somewhere in their
Yeah.
history at
Mm.
some point. Yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah. Koreans, like I said, they're scattered. Yeah. Not just in the US. There are a lot of Latin American Koreans.
Mm.
Like I met like a Francisco once. Like, I was like, what? He's like, yeah, like his name is Francisco or like Fernando or something. But yeah, he was like Latin America. He was like from Argentina. There's like a lot of
Uh-huh.
art, like
Yeah.
Argentine Koreans
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's like it's interesting. So you studied Korean literature or history or Korean studies? Like, what was your degree
Um,
in?
Sure. I did actually, my undergrad was in music. So I start from
Ah,
like the pure humanities in a sense.
yes.
And in the near the end of my degree, I was very lucky to kind of find a supervisor who realized I do not like music and that all my essays were on operas and only looking at the visual of the stage and kind of the narrative without looking at the music. And he was like, you should study film studies. You shouldn't be in music.
Mm-hmm.
And so he kind of sent me on that path. So I did a master's in film studies.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I got into Korean cinema and did my PhD at the same university, which ended up being, I think, quite a fatal mistake in hindsight because there was no film studies department. So I had to go to East Asian studies to study Korean cinema.
Right.
But that meant that I really changed my discipline and I had to kind of learn East Asian history. And now I would say I'm more like a Asian studies scholar than a film studies scholar. So
Sure.
I think that was the transition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny how that happens. Like, I was lucky in the sense that, you know, I'm at UCLA and it's like cinema media studies. Of course, it's very, Euro American, Eurocentric, but they're okay with me just try like with all of us trying on our own things. In fact, they welcome
Hmm.
it. They're like, please diversify our shit because we're
Hmm.
ashamed of how white it is.
But
In
that's
fact,
so great.
yeah, yeah. They have a course, and I think I told you this. They have a course called Asian, African, and Latin American Cinema.
They dumped it all together,
All
basically.
three continents in one fucking class. And I was just
Yeah.
like, wow, 10 weeks,
So
really? You know?
So they were like, we need to do something on like something not white. Let's lump it all together in
All
one
of it.
course.
All the people of color, one class.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I was just like, this is shameful. But yeah, I took, I think, one class like in the Korean studies program, and I took it with Namhee Lee, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was really enriching. I'm glad I took that course because it set a certain foundation for me,
Hmm.
and Like I read certain texts that I never would have read otherwise, and certain histories I
Wait, what's your background?
Oh, so I studied English Lit as an undergrad.
Okay.
It was English literature and philosophy. But although I was in the English department, I didn't really like English literature, so I studied yeah, like a lot of European modernists and stuff. And then I took an independent study with the poet in residence, Charles North, who is like a mentor teacher to me, and he encouraged me to just study like Korean literature on my own. And so I was like, okay, well, since I'm studying a lot of European modernists, why don't I study some Korean modernists? So that's when I started like reading like, like Ishang and like, yeah, those guys. So, yeah, and then I started translating some poetry, and then I eventually started translating like novels and short stories.
Oh, wow.
So I started doing translation stuff. Yeah. And then
So
for
you
my
really have a
master's,
literature background.
technically, yes.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why yeah, that's where the analysis comes in, right? Like the training and analysis. That's where cinema media studies comes from, of course. And
Yeah.
and then I worked. Well, I did a year in Korea in Seoul right after undergrad. I did a Fulbright at Yonsei for 1 year. And then when I got back to New York, I was just kind of like doing all kinds of like internships and part-time jobs and all this other stuff. And then I worked in film distribution for a little bit, and then I came to LA for my master's in cinema media studies, and now my PhD in cinema media studies, which I'm just about wrapping up.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so okay, so you're not a Koreanist per se then. You're actually
I
trained
don't
in
know.
cinema studies. Yeah.
I don't know. I sort of feel like I have become more of a Koreanist now, especially because after the PhD, I think it depends on where you get your first position, right?
Sure. Right.
Because I've been in a full Korean studies department now. I like literally teach and read only shit about Korea. And beyond culture now, I've taught Korean politics, sociology, like
Wow.
history, all decades. And so I feel like I've really become a Koreanist now, more through the training after the PhD than through the
Yeah.
PhD itself. Because I
Astrology
really,
too?
sociology,
Oh, so did you say astrology?
sociology,
Oh my God. I was like, Korean astrology? I was like
astrology.
fascinated. I was like, oh my gosh, she studied that
What
and
is
taught Korean
Korean
astrology?
astrology?
I don't know. I was thinking like maybe like mudang stuff, like like you're reading the
You know what?
students
That would be
haju.
so popular with students,
It
though.
would be. They'd be all
It would
over
be so
that.
popular.
There's
They would
this
literally love it.
Yeah, there's this mudang in New York. She's Korean, I guess Korean American, but she's more Korean than American, if you know what I mean. And she's a mudang. She's a mudang, and like a lot of Korean scholars actually go to her for readings. And
But she works in New York?
she works in New York. Yep, yep. And she like I hired her for like a Saju reading for 2021, and it was like $30. I was like, sure, that's money well spent. Yeah, I know. I'll put you in touch with
Is
her.
it good?
It was like
How's
it
your
was like
Saju?
it was better than just looking shit up on the internet. I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
You
but
know
I
what I
do
mean?
that anyway, right?
Yeah. I mean, we all kind of come on. Whenever shit hits
yeah.
the fan, we're just like, what's going on with the stars right now? But like, I wanted to just get it from like a professional, And yeah, she gives readings. Yeah, and she also
That's
does
so
like
funny.
yeah, she also does like food rituals, and
Oh, wow, that's proper.
she's full on. I'll send you her link. Her
I'm
name's
surprised there are like clients in New York.
she has a lot. She has a big clientele. Well, I mean,
Really?
just think about like I said, Americans are Americans, and like horoscopes are popular anyway, and tarot
Yeah.
readings are popular anyway. But like, let's say
Yeah.
you attach that with some kind of ethnic indigeneity, they're gonna be all over that shit. That is like the easiest shit to sell. So I was like, she's
Like
genius.
marketing.
Yes, I was like, she's
That's
brilliant.
so funny.
She's brilliant, rather than being like, like trying to come off as some hokey pokey fortune teller. Imagine
Right,
saying
right.
like, I'm an ordained shaman.
Right.
Whoa. They'd pay big money for that.
That is so funny.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, her
I
name's I
love when
think
you go
Jen.
to a
Yeah.
professional and then I look up like Elle magazine horoscopes, such a comparison here in the standards.
No. I do all of it. I do all of it. Yeah. No, I do that too. But yeah, she's great. Yeah, she's great. I think you and I are the same year, right? Your
Oh,
year
yeah.
of the rabbit?
87? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm year of the rabbit
Oh,
as well. Yeah.
awesome.
I heard
That's
that.
quite rare to meet someone like
Yeah.
exactly the same age at a conference.
I know.
Quite rare.
I know. Yeah, I once met somebody who was born the same year, same month, same day. I was like, whoa.
At an academic conference.
Yeah, he was a part of my program. Yeah, at my
Oh,
school.
wow.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is too much.
Wow,
It's like,
that's quite intense.
yeah, I was like, this is too much. Just keep some
Yeah.
distance. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
But
want
then,
to. Yeah,
technically the time is different, so your fates are different, according to astrology.
100%. Time is everything. And also, I was born in Korea, which is, faster in terms of time.
Yes.
So there's all these differences. But okay, yeah. So, but I did hear that year 2021 is going to be good for Year of the Rabbit people.
Oh, I
So
dear fucking hope so. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
yeah, I
Because
fucking
you're gonna
cursed
edit it
like
all out, right?
5
Yeah.
fucking times. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cursing's fine on
Oh, I
podcasts.
bloody hope
Yeah.
so. 2020 was so difficult. I'm like, I definitely need something in my life to change right now. No more of
Yeah.
this.
It is awful. But I mean, but you get to teach right now. I mean, I think that's great. And were you teaching? You were teaching a TV studies class or trying to teach TV studies?
I want to. So, if I next get a chance, I'm gonna try to. So, I usually teach mostly undergrads, but sometimes I do a master's course.
Nice.
But I normally do a second semester undergrad, so that's like the first year,
Sure.
and then the third semester, so the second year. So the first year I normally do Introduction to Korean Cinema, which is quite popular, basic. Students like it.
Right.
But I want to replace that with something like Korean society through K-drama or something to do with K-drama where we look at kind of social issues, but also
Yes.
not only through, but also the relationship between TV and society, etc. So I
Right.
want to do that, but I just didn't have time to do a whole new syllabus this year. So I just did Introduction to Korean Cinema again.
Yeah.
And
Nah.
then next year, hopefully, for
Yeah.
this, I'll have time to,
Yeah.
yeah,
I would say do
change
it.
it.
It's my first time teaching this course. I'm teaching an undergraduate seminar right now on Korean television, and um, I remember because like again with the Koreanists at UCLA, I remember asking them. I was like, "Do you guys teach a Korean studies class?" I mean a Korean television studies class, and they're like, "No, we do K-pop and we do Korean cinema," and both of them pack out. Like the students like totally enroll fast. And I was like, okay, so
Yeah.
no TV. They're like, yeah, we don't know anything about Korean TV. I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's the
Uh,
problem. The academics don't watch enough TV.
Here's the thing. You and I both know academics watch a lot of fucking TV. And those
Oh, that's
bitches
true.
don't want to, they don't want to fucking admit it. They don't want to admit that they watch it and that they like it, okay? They're so stuck
I
up.
love that.
I remember when we were at Helsinki at that conference, the Korean Screen Cultures
Uh-huh.
Conference, which is a great conference for all Koreanists who do screen studies. Like, I loved your presentation because it was about Korean dramas and it was fun. Like I was like alert
Uh-huh.
and engaged. I
Uh-huh.
still remember the
What did I
emoticons that you
do?
had. You had
Can't
like
remember. Oh,
it
it
was
was the
about
Pogodet one.
it was
Uh-huh.
like a storytelling mode or something, and then you had like
Right.
smiley face or sad face, like with
Oh.
endings. And I was like, yes, this is what I want to see in journals. I want to see these things.
In
And then,
journals. Oh, you
yes,
take it one step too far, girl.
because I'm an American. Yes, I take it all the way. And I was just like sitting in there and I was like, I'm alert. Everybody's engaged. Like everybody was like smiling kind of and like listening and they wanted to chat. Like it lightened things up. And I was just like, why don't people, just why don't they want to go here? Why don't they want to go here? They
Yeah.
always need to make it boring and dry in order for it to feel like legitimate academia, but it doesn't have to be that way at
But
all.
whenever I don't often do K-drama. Well, so far I hadn't, but I want to. But when I do, one of the questions I always get, which is so stupid and so like demeaning, is when do you have time to watch all these shows? And I'm like, How can you not? Also, like you don't watch hours watching TV. I'm
They
sorry, I'm
do.
very insulted by this question
You
right
should
now.
be insulted. Because
When we watch films or like one, I don't know, director's whole collection, we don't say, "Oh, when did you have time to watch all these like
exactly.
films?"
Yeah, when did you have
Yeah.
time to watch 10 of Cassavetes' movies, you know? Or when did you have the wherewithal? Like, did you have to build endurance before you sat through that Bellatar movie? You know, like, we don't question that, but when it comes to television, I mean, it's like, you know, you studied cinema studies, so you would know this, but like, you know, TV's always been gendered as female, and it's been discriminated against since the dawn of television, practically, you know, from the film industry
Yeah.
because they felt
Yeah.
threatened by television. Come on, you know, and
Yeah.
the fact that fear, that insecurity exists to this day is so silly. It's so
Yeah,
silly.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
all to do with the capitalism, basically. It's the
Yes.
industry's fight, and yet
Yes.
the people's kind of perception is
They
along that line.
moralized it. Yeah. They
Yeah,
moralized
exactly.
it as like
Perfectly said.
film is moral, TV is immoral, it rots the brain.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're the same, dude. It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, they're
And
exactly the same.
actually, I would go a step further and say nowadays TV is more innovative because, you know, cinema is so polarizing now. You get the big blockbusters or you get like these indie films that don't get distributed as much. And so actually,
Exactly.
so much of the really artistic things are developing now. That middle ground is TV.
Yes.
So we cannot have this division. But
We
I think
can't.
with K-drama, we do
Yeah.
not have that middle ground, right? It's still cheap. It's seen as cheap entertainment.
Really? Yeah.
That's what I think. That's
Yeah.
why people say, "Oh, you do K-drama." They look down on you. They're like, "It's low art," you know. Oh, but you do cinema. That's higher, but not as high as literature. Oh, you do pre-modern literature. That's the highest. You know?
Yeah.
It's like the
No,
ranking.
and the thing is, like, I kind of still have that prudish quality to me, you know? Like, I do have that prude sensibility because, again, I come from a literature background and, you know, I worked in film distribution, I worked in film production, so I do have this prudish, that discrimination is built into me. But the fact is, as you say, like, television is very, it's like very, there's a spectrum, there's a range, it's very varied. And you know, like John Caldwell, who's at our school, he wrote that great book Televisuality, and he's just like, are you gonna sit here and tell me that you don't see postmodernism in 1980s television, you know? Which you do. Like, you see avant-garde in television. There's a lot of experimental you know, elements in television, and it's just like, oh, okay, if you think of it this way, it's just a matter of shifting
Yeah.
your mode of thinking,
Yeah.
and then it's like a whole
Yeah.
field. Yeah.
Or like looking without kind of the previous lens of discrimination, you know, or prejudice.
Yes. But it's hard to do that, I think, because we've been brought up on it, you know, like
Yeah.
even in my Korean TV studies class, I asked them, I was like, how many of you have heard this phrase, TV rots the brain, or TV's trash? And they were all like, you know.
Oh,
And
I haven't
asked
heard
them,
that phrase.
oh, really?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you haven't heard, like, oh, don't watch too much TV, it'll fuck up your brain, or you haven't heard that?
I haven't heard that. I guess
Really?
my mother was a screen addict, so we would just watch TV together growing up. This is the origin of K-drama
interesting.
for me.
Interesting. See, because that's also the origin of K-drama for me, and for a lot of people, for the most part,
Yeah.
our mothers were our first tastemakers, right? But like, even though she watched a lot of fucking television, she still said, "You're watching too much TV." I'm like, "Bitch, you're watching too much TV. Like,
Yeah.
don't come at me. I'm just here next to you while you're watching too much TV."
Right,
Um,
right.
no, but I brought that up because in America, you know, like Newton Minow said, TV's a vast wasteland. And he said this, like, you know, when television was first starting to like enter homes and like really proliferate, and that started this like discrimination, like, you know, sort of cemented that discrimination as TV as being trash. And then in Korea too, in like 1968. So this is like recent history that I'm like reading on. I have like a bunch of textbooks, and I'm like, you know, going through them for lectures and stuff week by week. But in 1968, there was a professor in Korea who said, like, if TV's crass, TV's crude and lowbrow, and if our children watch it, they will in turn become crude, crass, and lowbrow.
That's quite.
So yeah, and that's like very much in sync with what like Newton Minow said, and again, this cemented stereotype that we have to this day is like they were just afraid of screens invading the home and people having less time to sit and talk with their family members or sit and
Right.
read a book, as you say.
But what's funny is that that's such a myth, especially of America or kind of the Western cultures of sitting
Hmm.
together and eating, or,
Hmm.
you know, maybe the dining together, not so much. But, you know,
Mm,
when you really think about Korean history, I
mm,
don't know how much that is a reality of 1950s, 60s Korea. It's more like the
mm.
myth that was seen through the films of 1950s from Hollywood that they saw, and they think family life, middle class family life should be about sitting together.
Right.
Wife is dressed up in the apron, and
Yeah.
not TV, but having spending time together like
Yes.
this. And
Yes.
I don't know,
Sitting down, saying grace, having chicken pot pie or
saying
something gross
grace.
for dinner, you know? Like the Korean interpretation or understanding of culture in the West is channeled through films and television, right? Like I was rewatching that old school drama, I think came out in like 2003 or 4, All In. Do you remember that?
Oh
With
my God,
Lee
yeah.
Byung-hun and Song Ye-kyo when she was super
Oh my
young.
God, yeah. I
I was
have
rewatching
not seen it
this.
since 2000 whenever it came out, so I cannot remember it properly. But all I remember is someone dies at the end, right? It's that era when everyone died at the end,
A
right? The
lot of people
protagonist
died.
dies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, no. The protagonists live. It's a happy ending,
Oh,
but
it's a happy ending.
a lot of people do
All
die
in.
because there are a lot of gangsters um, from in that show, and like one of the gang bosses tells his stooge to watch The Godfather. Like he
To
literally
learn.
says, he's like, I watched The Godfather like 20 times. He's like, have you seen
So
it?
proud.
And the stooge is like, no. He's like, you should watch it. Like that teaches you everything. It teaches you how to be a gangster. It teaches you how to threaten people. I was just like, God damn. And but that's how it is for a lot of non-Western cultures, I think. Like even
Yeah.
in that documentary, The Act of Killing, like these Indonesian gangsters and thugs learned how to kill and murder by watching gangster cinema from Hollywood. And then,
Oh, that's cool. That's
yeah,
very fascinating to learn. Oh,
yes,
wow.
yes, this whole notion of like simulation or,
Right, right,
imitation, all of that.
right.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. That's so interesting.
yeah. So I like what you say about, like, yeah, because Koreans, like, fucking, like, it's gender segregated, like the women have to sit with the kids and eat separate tables from the men and the fathers and uncles and dads and whatever. And like the women, in fact, they eat way later because they're too busy
Yeah,
cooking and feeding everybody, Like
yeah,
even my mom, like whenever we had we had guests over for dinner, she would be the last to eat. Yeah.
yeah.
She would
This
be,
is so typical, right? Yeah,
yes, standing and cooking till the end
yeah,
of the whole event. you
yeah.
know?
But I love this idea of a family meal because how many fathers come home for dinner in time?
Uh-huh.
It's like the Korean concept is for me, the way I,
Yes.
see the Korean culture, not just now, but like when we talk about like 60s, 70s, in these films,
Yes.
Korean films of the 50s, they show these family meals. I'm like, how many of you guys, like the people in the cinema, actually had family meals? This is like a
Right.
concept you've adopted from Western
Yeah.
screens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there's a romanticism associated with
Yeah.
it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a longing or a hope or um even like an ideal that they have, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's quite old now, but I still use it a lot in my teachings. 장경섭's compressed modernity.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But the chapter on accidental pluralism of family ideologies, I
Hmm.
I find that one so good for undergrads to understand that kind of idea that it's adopted ideology,
Yes.
and then we talk about it through screen,
Yes.
because they one of the ideologies that he mentions is the affectionate one, which is, he says, from 1950s Hollywood films that it really proliferated this ideology of family
Right.
being a place of conjugal like love and
Yeah.
all this.
Yeah.
But that's really useful in teaching, I find, because then students kind of because if you just explain the complexity to students, I found they're always like, oh, I don't know if I get it,
Yeah.
it's too much,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And then
Yeah.
he gives you these like labels, and then they're like, okay, I understand, we've got the
Yes.
labels.
Yes,
And it
that's
helps a
why.
lot.
Yeah, that's why sociologists are helpful in that sense, you know. They give
Yeah.
you terms. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they define it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They define it, but they don't give you any resolution. They're just like,
No, no,
you just
no, that's not their job.
just categorize it here. Here is the list, the Rolodex. Is like, okay.
Yeah.
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 This is what I've seen, and I've called it this, and I've defined it like this.
Yes.
And then students are like, so according to this, you
They
know,
just repeat it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they're like, this is defined as this, and
I
therefore
know.
we can see. You know?
Some of the students, especially if they're like, if they were raised Korean, you know, there's a
Yeah.
lot of Korean UCLA
Oh,
students,
wow.
and you know, they have this sense of like superiority over the material, you know, and the culture, which is completely understandable,
Right.
and they have the right to. However,
Yeah.
it's like I'm not asking for like a personal essay, like a page out of their diary, you know, but that's
Is that what they give?
kind of what's happening. Yeah, it's like, oh, like my mom
Yeah.
this, like my family members that, and I'm like, okay,
Oh,
that's all
wow.
fine. You can integrate that, but try and analyze it critically
Right.
and do the assignment that's on the prompt.
Right,
Like,
right. Yeah.
try and answer this,
But this
but
is
it's
a
hard.
trend with undergrads, right? They're so personal in their like writing as well, I think, in their approach. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I actually don't allow those kind of personal. I don't allow that tone, actually. I'm really strict with the tone, because I once had this class where it was actually like, it was like reading a diary, and I was like, I'm not wasting my time reading your diary. The whole point is a review of the article, and you're just telling me your like views on the topic, not even what's discussed in the article.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm really strict. I say like, I want a like academic paper, even if it's just one page. It has
Yes.
to have a structure, intro,
Yes.
argument, like.
Yes.
And then that kind of weeds out that kind of writing. But
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I should consider that. But I mean, I want to get them to like be able to do that, because like my thinking is, so maybe they just don't know how to, you know?
Right.
And even though I have the prompt and I'm like, just answer these questions here, like
Right.
they still kind of stray from it, because maybe it's like TV and Korean drama was like this like leisurely thing for them, a leisurely activity, and it was a vice activity perhaps, and now it's like suddenly got this rigidity associated with like reading critical analyses and reading historical context and whatnot, and they're just not able to meld those two worlds. But I'm just like, yeah, I'm like, how do I get them to be a little bit more the thing that like I make fun of academia for, you know, where I'm
Right.
like, when it comes to the conferences, I'm like, can you guys just chill out, you know? But then when the students are too chill, I'm like, can you guys like kind of maybe be a little bit more serious, you
I
know?
love that. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
But you know, to be chill, you have to be able to do the serious as well. So they've got to learn, right?
Amen. Yes,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Yes, yes, yes. That's like one of the first things I learned as a freshman. Like a professor was like, you need to know the rules in order to break them. I was like,
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
okay. I was like,
Exactly.
all right, I will remember this
Yeah.
for a lifetime. I think I like that
Yeah.
phrase. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so what is this article that you read about the colonial mental illness thing? That is so interesting.
It was a book. It was Theodore Teddy Yu from Yonsei
Oh,
University.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
His book on mental illness in colonial Korea.
Oh my God, that's fascinating. Yeah.
But like you said, these questions really help, like prompting questions. Like we did an essay. I recently made them write a small paper comparing burning. I don't know if you saw burning,
I
and
love that movie.
peppermint candy. That's quite
Oh,
old, right?
Great
So
film.
we talked about peppermint candy in class, and then burning they had to watch it by itself. But
Yes.
because then you give them some prompting questions, and I think that helps. But you know, it depends on the student. Some students are able to do it; they follow
Yes.
the questions, and some people aren't. And you're just like, okay,
Yes.
that's where the divide lies, right?
Yes,
You
yes.
can't get everyone.
You can't get everybody. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Like right now, because I'm working on applications for like postdocs and like teaching positions and whatnot, and like they ask for a teaching statement. I don't know if you had to write this, but
Oh, so many times. I
Yeah.
feel like I've done so many applications.
I know.
Join
I
the
know.
welcome, Grace. Join
I'm
the
in
club.
it. I'm in it. I'm in the thick of it. And I'm just like, one of those things I wrote is like, oh, part of like meeting students where they're at is like waiting for them, is like kind of, even after the class is over, it's like hoping that they'll get it at some point later in life,
Right.
because they're not going to get it during the duration of the 10 weeks I'm with them. So kind of being like, all right, it's not a loss. It's just it's a waiting period for themselves and their lives. And I was like, okay, like I'm satisfied with that answer. I'll leave it there. I'm not sure how much I believe in it,
Yeah, I was gonna say like no.
Yeah, it's hard to, right? Of
Reality
course.
is so difficult.
It's so hard. It's so hard. I know. It's like, why are you asking us to write this BS when it's like,
Yeah, but the worst one is diversity statement.
oh Lord.
I mean, you're in California, so you must have seen a few already.
Of course, yeah.
But for
I'm
me, I was like,
writing
that is
them.
the most stupid shit anyone has to waste their time on. No one is going to write, I'm against diversity, right? I do not understand the point of this document. And then sometimes they're like, it has to be 2 pages. I'm like, you want 2 fucking pages, or everyone's saying, I support diversity in A, B, C, D, right? I was like, hiring me is diverse itself.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
hire me, right?
Yeah. It's like you good on you for hiring me. I know, but I also agree. I don't know what the point of it is. Maybe, and this is just like my cynicism stepping in. Maybe the point of it is like if they want to hire a white person, right? And they want to make sure that this white person is kosher, right? And they have their diversity stuff in check, in place. Like they're not writing crazy shit. Maybe that's what it's for. So
To double check, right?
yeah, it's mostly to check in with the whites more so than the people.
But that
who
is so
fall.
annoying for everyone else.
It is. It's like
a
why
waste
you?
of time.
Yeah, why you? Maybe they should just be like, okay, if you are not a white, if you are not a cis man and hetero, then you don't have to write this.
I really think they should start that.
Yeah, because it takes time. Writing each of these fucking documents takes so much time. I have three applications that are due in February, and I'm just like, ugh,
They're
it's like
really
never
time
ending.
consuming.
They are. Ugh.
Yeah.
But I
But
think,
good luck, Grace. Good luck.
thank you. I'm really trying my best not to lose hope. I'm getting the rejection slips in the inbox already. Like 3 came
But
in
this
already.
is your first year of trying, right?
It is my first year of trying. Absolutely.
Oh,
it
shut the
is.
fuck up, woman. No.
I know.
No.
I know.
Just no.
I know. I should chill out, but it's like the last 2 rejection slips, like I wasn't that impacted by it. The first one I was just like, God damn, but like the last 2 I was just like, all right, But I think also like with the pandemic and all, and like the recession and all, I think it's also tough. Because I mean, since
it's
you
really
and I,
tough, right?
yeah, since you and I graduated around the same time, like I graduated into an economic recession in the United States, and there were no jobs. There were none. In fact, all 8 years of my high school and college schooling, all I heard from every single adult around me was, wow, you're going to have it tough once you graduate. I was like, thanks. Because it was the Bush administration, and that fucker was, ruining everything for us. And I was just like, God damn,
Yeah.
And it
But
did
that's
take me
the
a long
only
time.
reason I did a master's, to be honest, because I couldn't get a job. It was so impossible in 2008, when I graduated. It was 2008.
Yeah.
Because UK is 3 years. And it was just impossible. Everyone did a master's.
The worst. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just like, now I'm like, should I just like stay in school? Like, should I just like get an MFA or like,
You already have a book published.
an MBA? Like, yeah. I'm like, should I go to law school? Maybe I should go to law school. Like I'm like sitting around
You should
like
go to law school.
thinking that, nah, I don't
And
wanna
you should
study
please
anymore.
make millions. I would like someone around me to please make millions. So I know it happens to some good people in the world.
Oh my God. That is like, no. The moment anybody makes $1 million, their heart turns black. Yeah.
I would love for my heart to turn black. I would like that chance, please. I want the chance to be able to know what it feels like, so that I have a choice. At the moment, I am denied.
To not have empathy, to not care. What is it like?
What is it like,
Yeah.
to have so much money that you're just an asshole?
Yeah, yeah. But let's talk about Something in the Rain a little bit since we're here, you know.
I just want to say I love that drama.
I love this drama too. So much. What did you love about this show?
Well, I love all rom-coms, right? Like this
Mm-hmm.
is how I got into film studies. I've always
Yeah.
loved rom-coms, and I love K-dramas, romances, but they're always so melodramatic, right? And
Sure.
that's the fun of it, and I love
Yes.
that too because I really love
Yes.
all aspects of screen.
Mm-hmm.
But this drama was so subtle in its kind of love, and it was so down to earth and so nuanced, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that was so refreshing in its own way, in a very
Yeah.
quiet way,
Yes.
that I loved it. And I also loved the soundtrack, which I know so many people did too.
Yeah.
Although they went a bit overboard and played it too many times,
Too
the
many
same songs,
times.
too many
Yeah.
times. I think
Yeah.
first few episodes I was like, I like it, and then I was like, too much.
Enough.
But I
Yeah.
still, it worked, you know?
It did. It did. Yeah, I agree. I think the writer director duo. I think Kim Eun is the writer and Pansuk is the director, and I think they're a good duo because they also collaborated for One Spring Night. Which have you seen?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I felt like Something in the Rain was better than One
Yeah,
Spring Night in a lot of ways.
yeah.
And there was a sort of purity to Something in the Rain that One Spring Night sort of compromised on a little bit. Like
In what sense?
I'm working on this piece right now. It's a paper. It's about I'm gonna write about my Mister and once Something in the Rain and perhaps One Spring Night. I'm not sure yet, but like for Something in the Rain, I felt like it was a very realist drama. Um, like many static shots, like static frames, like just a single frame, just like long shooting, just like shooting for a long time, long takes, and not a lot of like jump cuts and editing, like not a lot of frames per minute, that kind of feel, just kind of letting the drama flow or letting the tension take place, but from a distance. And I think that's the subtlety and quietness that you're pointing to. It's like it's a realist drama. It's like watching a theater piece almost. And this could have just as easily, I think, become like a makjang drama. It could have if
Yeah,
they made certain stylistic choices or aesthetic choices. But
yeah.
I think the director is a bit of a realist kind of director. Like he's like the one K-drama director whose sort of like branding touch I can kind of feel, like his
Right,
auteur
right.
touch I could
Uh-huh.
sense through the screen. Whereas like other K-drama directors I don't really
Yeah,
pay attention to. I pay more attention to the drama writers, which
yeah,
makes
yeah.
more sense when it comes to television. But with him, I'm like, okay, he's about something. He's thinking.
What else has he done except those two?
He did the Kim Hye drama with Yoo In, the one it's called like an affair or something
Oh,
like
I
that.
haven't seen that
So
one.
Yoo In is a piano student. He's a virtuoso, and Kim
Okay,
Hye is like a piano teacher. And she's like the
okay.
director of some kind of like uh, music hall or whatever. And she's very wealthy, and they start having an affair. And
Mm,
she's married to
mm,
somebody, and she's like part of like the upper echelons of Korean
mhm,
society, and he's
mhm,
like very low class, like working class
mhm.
boy, and they start having an affair. So yeah, like I was like, oh, okay, so like this director is into like older women and younger men kind of storylines, but beyond just that, he's into like sort of like a realist sort of aesthetic.
Yeah.
With an affair, it's had that too. You could kind of feel that touch, but with
Mhm,
Something in the Rain, it was very like oh, like this is the one. Like this is the one that's
mhm.
sort of like giving him that branding, I would say, or that imprint.
But also the acting was so spectacular. I mean,
So good.
so good. I mean,
Everybody, everybody on that
yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah.
Literally
I
every
loved
single
it.
person. Yeah, and then that's why they use pretty much the same ensemble cast for One
Yeah,
Spring Night. It's like,
yeah,
oh, like
yeah,
she's so and so, or he's so
yeah.
and so.
But it was
Yeah.
too similar for me. It just,
Mm,
I didn't know. The storyline, I didn't know. What I loved about Something in the Rain was that even the obnoxious characters were
Yes.
not, it's not like a bakjang, they were not made, they're obnoxious, but
Yeah.
you could still kind of still see their perspective a little and
Yes.
empathize somewhat, like with the mother and the father.
Exactly.
But with One Spring Night, I just didn't feel enough from each character. I was just a bit like, okay, the main characters, it didn't develop enough for me. It seemed more or
Mm-hmm.
less the same from the start.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas
Mm-hmm.
with Something in the Rain, you were with them right throughout, and you see their development, and
Yes.
you follow.
100%. I totally agree. Yeah, and I think Son Ye-jin is just such an accomplished actress.
Oh
Like,
my God, yeah,
I mean, we've seen her like our entire lives. Like, she's been in show business for
yeah,
like 20 years and she's still in her
yeah,
fucking 30s. It's
yeah,
remarkable.
yeah.
But
And she is so good at every role she takes. So
every
convincing.
single, I have not seen her in a single film or TV show where she sucked
Yeah,
ever. Like since
yeah,
the beginning of her acting career, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And she's just like a natural born talent and so beautiful.
So
And
beautiful.
Chung
And so
Hae-in was
poised. Mm,
so poised. Yes. She's
yeah.
like really got full control, like full
Mm,
presence, command control. Um and she's got like I don't know, like I'm sure you've seen Crash Landing on You, but like she's also so funny. Like she has a
yeah.
great sense
I
of
love
humor.
Crash Landing on You.
What a great show.
I
I
heard
mean,
parts of your podcast as well. I didn't get to
yeah.
finish it, but I loved
Oh,
it. Yeah.
such a great show. But yeah,
Yeah.
even in that, like amazing comedic
Yeah.
timing and all of that. I was just like,
Yeah.
yes,
I mean,
yes.
I'm not an actor, so I don't know, but
Yeah.
I always get the impression that if you act with someone like her, she almost kind of brings it out naturally in you. Whoever she works with, she makes it just work, right? The chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah. Yes.
Because Chong
And
In's
that's why,
role was good, but it was kind
yeah,
of easier than her role, right?
it was. I would say so. I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, like Chung Hae-in, he's very, very adorable kind of looking guy, very handsome. Looks like a very like a nice boy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you grew up watching K-dramas like, in the 90s and 2000s. So you of course know Ji-yoon, right? And like
Uh-huh.
he has that nice boy face, right? And I feel
Yeah,
like
I guess.
Chung Hae kind of has that
But
nice
Chong In's
boy.
nicer looking,
Yeah,
I
he is.
think.
He is.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's tainted because Yu Shiwen has all that scandal associated with like domestic
Right,
abuse and
right.
whatnot now, right? But in the 90s, when
Mm.
he always played the nice boy, like the nice
Right,
protagonist.
right.
That
Hmm.
he never played the villain ever. So
Right.
I was just like, yeah, Chung Hae-in has got that nice boy kind of look.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't
But
turn
I
out to be
really
a
welcomed
douchebag.
that because I feel like we
Yeah.
haven't had that enough. So
Mm,
in K-drama, we've been so obsessed with that, like cold, what's the phrase? Cold city. How do they say it in English?
I don't know.
Tushinam, what do they
But
say?
like just a
Yeah,
jerk off
the
boy.
jerk,
Yeah,
the jerk.
the jerk.
Exactly. We've had so many like these men who are jerks playing the
Jerks.
protagonist of a love story,
Yeah.
and they're kind of like that kind of toxic masculinity is
It's an
promoted,
abusive
and the women
relationship.
kind of throw themselves at them, are humiliated over and over again, episode after episode, and
Yeah.
yet the show is a success, and I think. This show showed us that we can have a nice, decent guy who,
Yes.
yes, stays too nice and decent throughout. So that was a bit boring, but still, it works, and that was so welcome for me.
It
Yeah.
was, and it's like, okay, he's reliable, like he's
Hmm.
steadfast, nice and true, and he's reliable, and it's like that should be stability, not
Yeah.
some wishy-washy, capricious asshole who like yells
Chaeboy,
at you.
always.
Yeah,
Third generation
a chaeboy
chaeboy.
who's screaming at you all the time, making fun of you.
Or like lies to you, stands you up. I'm like, what kind of woman with no dignity just stands? But what kind of human being, like gender aside, right? Like
Yes.
someone treats you like that and you're like, oh, I still love him. It's like, something's wrong with you, you know?
Yeah, abused people do that. Yes, abused
Yes,
people do that.
yes.
And of course, they all have the abusive parent or lack thereof,
Right.
That's like another
Always in
thing.
K-drama, yes.
Yes, it's like they're always orphans. And I'm just like, what is that about? That's like a
Yeah.
big theoretical question that I want to answer with the second monograph I work on. Because like I'm sort of like making an outline now, and I'm like, I want to answer that orphan question. Like orphans and refugees are a big part of Korean history. And we see an orphan in literally every single Korean drama. Like, name a Korean drama, there's gonna be a fucking orphan in there. And it's like to their detriment, always. You know?
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen an orphan who's like, it's all good. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
I've never
yeah.
seen one like that. And
Or like socially successful without any insecurities. They always
yes,
have some baggage that
yes.
comes out in it. Yeah.
Yes. And I feel like, oh, is this some kind of like while I understand it's good for storytelling and like, building conflict and whatnot, but it's also like, I mean, Korea has this history,
Yeah.
of like many refugees, many orphans, and to this day there are a lot of orphans that are being shipped out of Korea. Even though Korea is like, top 20 economy in the world, like what's going on? Yeah, so I kind of want to answer that question. It's like,
No,
what's going on with the
absolutely.
orphans,
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's this blood type patrilineage, isn't it?
that too,
Persistent.
that too,
Yeah. But
yeah.
with the orphans, something I always think is the Korean Americans or like diasporic Koreans are
Hmm.
depicted somewhat similarly, I always find, with
How
this kind
so?
of that otherness. I don't know.
Yeah.
I always think of that as related.
Huh.
Because you were talking about like the international adoptees, right?
Yes.
Alluding to that in the 80s.
Yeah.
When you see them coming out in cinema or like films about them or TV shows about them, it's always that othering distance. And I think that still continues on to the kind of kyopo who
Mm,
come back to Korea as well. At least that's my opinion.
for sure. I think that's true. Yeah. And the way that Korean dramas will often depict like anybody who's non-Korean, right? It's like even though they're like American, native English speakers, like they speak English as if it's their first time speaking ever, like on television. It's like, do you not know how to speak? Like, what kind of
Right.
actors? Where'd you find these actors?
Right.
And, and that's a problem you're gonna have in almost every single like movie or television where you have like these international kinds of collaborations. But yeah, I feel like in Korean dramas, like they need to work on that a little bit. Not to say that
Mm.
Hollywood doesn't make the same mistake. I'm sure
Mm.
you've seen Black Panther, right?
Yeah.
Remember that scene when they're in Busan and they're having a quick chat with the Koreans? I'm like, they're not Korean. Like,
I could not understand anything.
not a thing. Not a
It
thing.
was really tough.
I was like, I could understand Lupita Nyong'o way better
Right, right.
than this quote unquote ajumma right now. Like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on with her.
So that I don't know what happened because that was filmed in Korea, right?
Yes, it was filmed in Busan. I'm like, you have like probably like a million actors in Korea right now
Right,
who
exactly. So
who
I
you
don't
could
know
have.
what happened there. Yeah.
It's because
It
they
was
don't
weird.
try. They don't
Yeah.
try. They don't try and engage locally. Maybe because they're like,
Right.
oh, they're afraid of payouts. Like, oh, this is just
Right.
like two lines, and they don't want to pay somebody like
Oh, I
$1 million
see.
for this scene or whatever. But I'm like, but if it makes it good, why
Pay me a
not?
million and I'll do it, the two lines.
And let your heart turn black. Yes, all of it.
Yes.
Let it happen.
Proudly.
Proudly. Wait, so can I ask you about your dissertation book? Like where are you at that? What stage are you at with that
Oh,
process?
no, not a
No?
good topic.
Really? Okay.
Um, well, because I think in hindsight, actually, I don't think enough time has passed for it to really say in hindsight.
Sure.
But I actively made the decision not to welcome my monograph fully until I find a tenure track or permanent position.
Ah.
Because I was told that if you have because the process is quite fast. So once you find the publisher you like,
Mm-hmm.
normally I've been told they give you like 12 months to get the
Oh, wow.
manuscript in. And then within 12 months, then within the next like half a year to a year, it's out. So within a 2-year process, the book is out. And I wasn't really sure, because my position at Tübingen was 3 years to begin with. I wasn't sure whether I would be in a permanent position then. And so
Mm.
many people said, if you're on tenure track and your book is out before or already signed before you start the position, then that doesn't count towards your tenure.
Oh my
So then
God.
you'll have to write another book. So
Hmm.
I kind of actively decided to not work on that until I find a permanent position. Little did
Oh,
I know I'm still looking, and it has been 2 years, almost 3 years now. So in
oh,
hindsight, perhaps I should have gone ahead with it, not
yeah,
knowing that this would be the case.
yeah.
So I kind of made a few chapters into journal articles, and
Mm-hmm.
then I just started working on new journals because I just thought you need the journals for publication, you need the publication list, right, for the jobs.
Of course.
So I kind
Yeah.
of prioritized that over book. And then this year now I'm like, you know what, fuck it. It's been too long. I have to get back to the book. So
Yes.
actually one of my New Year's resolutions for 2021 was to get back and get that manuscript going and
Nice.
contact publishers.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
No, that I think that's great. Because I'm kind of, you know, y- like thinking about these things. Like, it's like overwhelming just thinking about
yeah,
going to, back in and then making massive revisions and trying to make them book worthy. It's just like the thought of
but
it
you're doing
alone
it
is
now.
overwhelming. No, right now I'm still,
Yeah,
I just got my comments back from my committee members, like
yeah,
just like a week or two ago.
yeah.
So now, yeah, and I just had my meeting with my advisor to talk about those comments and my plan and whatnot. And like he told me,
But
like
you
it's,
know, Grace,
Mhm.
sorry,
No, no,
finish your
it's okay.
story.
He just told me that it took him like 10 years to
Yeah.
make it a book. And I was like, shit.
I think a lot of people say 6 years, right? That's what I
Ugh.
hear
I was
often.
like
But
disgusted.
actually, the
Yeah.
6 years I think is since finishing the PhD, I've realized. And actually now it's been over 2 years for me since I finished my PhD, almost three, and
Yeah.
I've done nothing, I think, more or less, right? But
Uh-huh.
that has really been useful. I
Oh.
think maybe 3 years was too much, 2 years. I think you need at least a year and a half, that
Mm-hmm.
space away. And then you see other
Oh.
publications that you didn't see. And for me, I did so much teaching in that time that I got so much historical grounding that I didn't realize I didn't have, right? I thought I
Uh-huh.
had enough during my PhD. And
Right.
then you take a break, you teach the most random shit, right? That does not link to
Yes.
your topic, but they become
Yes.
secondary sources that help frame your argument in a way or whatever. And then there are
Yes.
more publications that come out. And I think that distance has been really useful for me to think, okay, the structure has to change like this, right? For a
Uh-huh.
book. And then you read more monographs in a different way during that time as well, because
Sure.
I mean, I did. So that was really useful. So
Okay.
I think some space is good,
That's
probably.
helpful for me to hear. Thank you. No, yeah, that's really useful because I was just like, man, like, wait, so like, once I file and submit, I have to contact publishers. I was just like, whoa, like
Right.
that just seems so intense. Like it seems too much. Yeah.
I think some people do though. So actually, at the end
Mm-hmm.
of my
Yes.
PhD, I got contacted by two publishers just from
Mm-hmm.
conferences,
Sure.
who were interested, and I'm really glad I didn't go ahead with them because if I had, I think the book would have come out more or less the same as the PhD standard, and
Mm.
then I would be really ashamed for the rest of my career, right? Because now you realize, oh, that was a piece of crap, and I don't want that to be associated with my name.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so
Yeah.
embarrassed and all this.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah.
had a professor tell me that she was just like, if anybody like approaches you like immediately and you're like a young scholar,
Yeah.
early on in your career and they just like approach you and they want to publish you immediately like blindly, just be wary of them. She's
Yeah.
just like, because they're
It means
more in
they're
need of
desperate.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're more in need of you than you are of them. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And she was just like,
Yeah.
she's like, just don't be insecure. Like set up some standards for yourself and,
Mm.
just know that like what you have is valuable. It's a valuable contribution. I was like, oh, okay, I'll keep that in mind. Thank you. She was basically saying, be a snob. Yeah.
But that is the attitude of academia.
Yes,
Snobbish.
be a chooser even though you're a beggar. Yes.
Yes, that is the also key part that I do not enjoy, but yes.
At all times. And I know, right? It's so idiotic. Like, oh, fucking.
And we have such piss poor pay. I'm like,
Yes. And yet it's like, oh, we're like professors. And so like, you would think like, oh, elegant lifestyle, like sophistication and blah blah blah. It's like we can't afford any of that crap. It's
yeah, yeah.
like we
We're like,
can't.
should I have dinner or spend that money on a bottle of wine? That's the reality.
Oh my God, it's so sad.
Yeah.
I can't stand the fact that it's like that over there too, because in the States it's very much the case. Like,
But Europe is
um,
much worse in terms of pay than the US, no?
are you serious?
I thought the
In
US has a higher salary for professors.
Are
I
you
thought.
kidding? I didn't know that. I don't think that's true. I thought for
Oh,
some reason,
maybe.
maybe this is like my ignorance, American ignorance. Like I was just thinking like, oh, like Europeans value intellectuals more than Americans do. They value artists more than we do. So I thought they
Right,
would be
but in
compensated.
America, when you're valued, they compensate with money. In Europe, when they value you, they just value you. They do not compensate. I mean, it's true. They may value, intellectuals, but they're not necessarily going to pay you more.
That's funny. Okay, I like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, in America it's all about money. It's all about
Yeah, if
money.
you're
Money
valued, you get
talks.
paid, right?
Yes, and we're trained that way too. Like unfortunately not until much later on in life, you know? Like I only learned like practically in my 30s like, to value myself in that way, cuz yeah, I did a lot of fucking free labor, free work with the creative stuff and intellectual stuff that I should have been compensated for. But yeah, now I'm like, no, like money talks. Like, like what's the contract? Give me a deal memo. What's the pay gonna be? I want to start out with that conversation first, and
Yeah,
then we'll continue because otherwise it'll be a waste of
yeah,
everybody's time. So
yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, this is a good way to wrap up. I know your article on what was it? It was like generic hybridity, right? With
Yeah.
fantasy mermaids and like aliens and whatnot. Um, I thought it was a great article. That's gonna be in an edited anthology coming out this year, right?
Yeah, so that I was actually saving that for a journal if possible, because for us journals matter so much for job
Sure.
applications.
Yes.
But I got well, it was through someone I knew. Someone recommended me to these
Mm-hmm.
editors who were making this book, compiling
Mm-hmm.
this book on kind of romance stories, and they wanted to include something from Korea related culture.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the editors was this scholar that I had read a lot as an undergrad on rom-coms that I enjoyed,
Mm-hmm.
like Hollywood rom-coms. And
Yeah.
so that kind of childlike part of me was like, I want to be in this book with this editor who I've,
Yeah.
read before, and it won't count for as much as journals, but I'm still going to do it. So I went
Yeah.
ahead, and actually it was such a great decision because they allocated a different editor for each article, and I got to work with a different editor.
Uh-huh.
But it was such a great process, and I learned a lot about how to edit well just through seeing how she edited my work and the back and
Mm.
forth kind of communication. And I think with journal peer review, you don't get that kind of one-to-one
Yeah.
help with your work. So
Yeah.
that was really useful. But that book is coming out in June, I believe. But
That's
I mean,
exciting.
we finished the manuscript like quite a while ago, so
Of
I think it's
course.
just the publishers are taking a while.
Yeah, that's how it is with academic publishers. But what's
Yeah.
the title of this anthology?
We in an age of I,
Oh,
and then
nice.
romance bonding in a blah blah blah. Yeah,
That's
something longer.
exciting. I'm really
Yeah.
excited for that. And so that's gonna
Yeah.
be like just like romantic comedy like across all like media, or is it TV specific?
No, I only look at five K dramas that feature kind of, I call it otherworldly beings. So people who are not humans, non-human characters as love interests. So like mermaids, aliens, whatever, within very famous big budget Korean K drama rom-coms.
Sure,
And
sure.
then I look at these five dramas and I look at the patterns and trends they have within and link it to kind of social phenomenons. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I meant like the anthology itself, but
Oh, anthology is
yeah.
like really beyond just screen. I mean, some of
Ah.
it's kind of looking at internet, like blogs, I think,
Oh,
and like
wow.
internet culture. So it's not just visual culture, it's
Okay.
just culture in general. And I
Oh,
think it's quite
wild.
global too. So I
Okay.
haven't read all the articles. I've just seen the contents list, obviously. But I
Mm,
look forward to the book being released so that I can see the articles too. So
that's exciting.
it sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really I quite liked your article. I thought it was a great one, and like when I reteach the K drama class, I'd like to incorporate it because yeah, this whole like fantasy stuff and like these it's like Koreans are so hell bent on like ethnic national like ethno
Right.
nationalism and all of
Yeah.
that, and then it's like okay, well how do we mix it up? And so oh look,
Right.
a mermaid, an alien.
Right. But with the mermaid, I love the way they try to base it in history. They're like, in like original primary text from whatever century, Koreans had
Yes.
mermaids, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
And they're like, this is the historical basis for this drama. Yeah.
Yeah, like
I love that. Yeah.
even I mean this is relevant too. Like my in the last episode I talk about like Kingdom and zombies in a period piece. Like have you seen Kingdom?
Of course.
Yeah, like that is wild too. It's like okay, it's Chosen Dynasty. There are zombies.
But what I loved about Kingdom was, I mean, it was good, but I didn't think it was
Yeah.
spectacular, right?
Uh-huh.
I enjoyed it, but it wasn't
Yeah.
like, but I loved how the hats went viral on Twitter. Did you see that?
The what?
Like West hats,
Their
hat
hats?
design. Yeah.
Like the
So all
cut and
these
stuff,
white
the sunbi
people
stuff?
watching Kingdom were like,
Ah.
check out the crazy hats in Korean geisha, like Kingdom. And they're like, the photos of different kinds of hats in the show went like crazy on Twitter. And I was like, I had never thought twice about the hats in this drama. And then the white people choose something that is completely, with a fresh eye. It was so
Yes.
funny. You should
Yes.
look it up.
Oh yeah, no, I love that. Well, I mean, their fashion is amazing. Like whenever I watch like Korean period pieces, I'm just like I adore their clothes.
Yeah.
Um
It's really beautified, right? Yeah.
they are. They are so beautiful and like they look so comfy,
Yeah.
because they're like loose and airy. I'm like I want to dress like that all the time. Like when I was watching Itaewon Class, I was obsessed with the patriarch's clothes that
Chande's clothes.
his clothes were amazing. I was
That's
like,
so
I
funny.
want to dress that way. Like, I want to dress like that
It was
man
so
all the
funny.
time. Yeah, it looked so
That's so funny.
elegant. It looks so elegant and clean and sharp and sophisticated, but kind of traditional in a way
Uh-huh.
and comfortable. It looked
Well,
really.
they did their job, didn't they? They convinced you. The words
I
you
was
just used
like,
to describe it exactly what they wanted.
yeah, I was like, I want that outfit for myself, just to wear and walk around
So
in,
funny. That's
Um,
so funny because when I saw that show, I watched it with my sister. My sister was
yeah.
like, I want to read his autobiography. I can learn so much from it. And I was like, he's the villain in this drama.
But
She's like,
he
I
was
don't care.
so fascinating. That character was
Oh.
really interesting. Was he
And
not? He
great
was so
acting,
interesting.
right?
Oh my god. That guy's an amazing actor. Like
Yeah.
he was in Reply 1988 as the
Yeah, I
goofy
was just about to
teacher
say
guy.
that.
Yes.
I
Like
was just about to say that, yeah.
very different. Very like.
Something in the Rain has so much in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
not just in terms of her work storyline of, the sexual harassment, but really in the kind of agency within a love story as well. I think the family
Yes.
duties of a female, there's so much there
Yes.
that we can I would love to read about, basically.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, you got it. Yeah.
Great.
I was just like, yeah, like this is something else. It's like very unique. It stands out very unique. There isn't
Yeah.
you don't have a chiba in Something in the Rain.
Yeah.
You just have the idea of it, which is
Yeah.
the mother's obsession, and
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
haranguing everybody around her
Which is the
because of that.
reality. It's always the
Yeah.
idea, right? Yeah. But
It's
actually, my mother saw that show
Yeah.
and she was like, I've learned really to appreciate the youth. And she said, I'm going to be more respectful of your relationships. And I was like, wow, this show
You're
has...
like, I'm married. What are you talking about?
Well, about
Like,
my sister, right? She was, because my sister's not.
right.
She was like, I understand that it's really hard. This show was really eye-opening for me. I'm going to
That's
try to be more
nice.
respectful. It was really interesting. And I thought, the
That's
drama did well.
fascinating. Yeah. That's fascinating. That could lead to a whole audience studies work on
Yeah.
Korean mothers and shifting values.
Right. But it's also a lot of mothers, I think, would not have stuck by and seen it, right? Like my dad gave up after one episode, was like, I'm not watching this shit. And I think
it's
that's
too
very
slow for
typical
him,
because they
maybe?
watch TV together. But my mum was like, I need to learn about young people's relationships through this drama because my daughter is unmarried. How difficult is it to date these days, etc.
And that is a really great eye-opening moment because it is really hard to date because there are
Yeah.
most men are shit. Like most men
Yeah.
are shit. Like I met your husband. He seems like a stand-up guy, really good guy. Caretaker, seems really sweet. But man, like there are some horrible, horrible, beastly men out
Yeah.
there, and
And also, just dating itself is hard,
it's a nightmare.
Yeah,
nightmare.
and I think parents just I don't know. It was really interesting hearing that response from my mother
That is
because
interesting. Yeah,
that age group do not often watch these dramas, right?
they
Yeah,
don't. It's actually very refreshing. Yeah,
somewhat.
I feel refreshed just hearing that. Like that's your mother's response. These and I don't know, maybe I should edit this out, but like these books on Korean television are so supremely boring that I want to just rip my eyeballs out of my sockets when I'm reading them because I'm just like, this is so tearfully boring. Like, why are you taking such a fun thing and then making it the most boring thing ever? Um,
It's also so limited. This is my problem with it. I go through the
mm.
contents and I'm like, really? It's like the same topics repeated, and there are so many
Yes,
good things at the moment that are not being addressed. And I
I
don't know whether it's
know.
because these scholars do not watch these shows or are they unaware of the trends, or whether the publication is so late
Yeah,
that, they're being written on and are not yet published. I can't tell
yeah.
what is the problem here, but
It might be
yeah.
both, and it also might be true that you and I watch too much TV. It's just
Yeah.
that just might be the case. We have better tastes maybe in television. It's like, why are you writing about this bullshit when you could have been watching this?
But Grace, I really have a generic taste. I'm so boring in what I like. I like something that everyone else likes. What I like
Yeah,
is always, something that everyone else likes. It's very like
hmm,
generic. It's nothing
yeah,
that new. So
yeah.
I don't understand what's,
I think it's the
yeah.
approaches.
Mm.
Because I think being a Koreanist is different than being like you have cinema media studies training. I have cinema media studies training. Like we're trained to look at things from beyond just one thing. Like you're
Right.
looking at like genre hybridity. Like I want to look at like genre as well, but like realism. Like what is
Hmm.
realism in the context of feminism in working like white collar spaces in Korea, like very
Right.
specific kind of thing. It's like we could be this specific and home in on this one thing and then talk about it for 25 pages. It's
Right.
possible. Whereas, maybe some Koreanists just feel like, oh, we got to talk about broad, big stroke stuff. And I'm like, do you have any idea how effing boring that is? Whenever they're like transnational flow, I'm like, put a gun to my head right now. Right now, end my life. This is so boring. I want to die. I don't care that you sold this shit to China. I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
The one article that I found very, very interesting in that it was that K drama anthology, the one that we both said like there weren't a lot
Oh,
of.
there's something Rise of K-drama or something, right?
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
Yes. Minju Lee, she was a student at UCLA in gender studies, and she and I used to do like a writing group thing when we were both writing
Okay.
our dissertation, and that was very helpful. She wrote this very, very fascinating like ethnographic piece where she studies Korean masculinity as like this attractive masculinity, and she went and stayed at hostels all around Korea, like in Seoul, I mean, where like non-Korean, like Americans, like American girls, American young women would travel to Seoul in order to essentially sleep with Korean men
What?
because I know, I
What?
know. How
This is a
juicy!
thing?
How juicy is that? I
I've
know.
never heard of this.
I
Also,
know. I know.
dedication.
I know. I know. The commitment that these
That is,
that
wow.
these these women have. I'll send you the
Kudos to
article.
them.
Yeah, yeah, go and
No,
get
our
yours.
library has
But
the book. I ordered it.
oh, okay,
I
okay.
just
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
read many of the articles. Yeah, I'll look
That's
that one
the
up.
one article I would say out of that anthology
Hmm.
that's
How's the
worthwhile.
ghost story one? That's the one I've been meaning to read.
Oh yeah,
Have you
yeah. I
read
need
that
to
one?
check out the ghost story one because I'm gonna teach
Yeah.
one on ghosts and zombies. But she yeah, like interviewed these young women, and they were
Wow.
basically it's an idea. Again, it's an idea. It's a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it's an imagined romance.
Mm.
And
Yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like Minju should have taken it a little bit further. So she's basically saying like these women have this Orientalist objectification of these Korean men
Mm-hmm.
because of what they've seen on Korean dramas, which is, of course, it's a TV show. Like Korean men
Mm-hmm.
are mostly not like that.
Yeah, like Chong Ain is not walking around, single.
He's not your soul. Come on. You're not going to find a Kim
Yeah.
Si-yeon everywhere you turn.
Yeah.
Come on, ladies. But they objectify these men, and the men in turn, of course, objectify non-Korean women's bodies and fetishize them.
course.
And so it's like almost a match made in heaven, except it's like very much not seeing each other for who they are.
But
You know
in
what I
a way,
mean?
that's what they want, right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
well, no, the girls want actual authentic romance. That's what
they
they
want more. It's not just they're
Oh.
not here just for a
It's
fling
like-
or a one night stand.
There is this like one segment, and I don't know if it's in that, because I was reading Minju's dissertation when we were in that writing group, but this one story that just like broke my heart. So there was this young girl. She's like a recent college grad, or she's in college doing a study abroad for a summer. She's in Seoul. She meets a Korean guy. They start dating. She doesn't want to have sex with him. He keeps pressuring her to have sex, and she, in her mind, she keeps rationalizing. In the
Okay.
interviews, she keeps rationalizing him as still this ideal, gentle, genteel man. And he's not. He's obviously a piece of shit, right? But like even to the end, she continues to So it's like this hell-bent fantasy, this this imagination that she
see.
doesn't want to let go.
I was thinking, when I first heard you describe it, I thought it was going to be the opposite, where these women just want a one night stand
You
with
would
the
think.
Korean. You know, they go, they don't care if it's not real, they just want it, and then they're out, right?
Like
But-
a sex tourism kind of thing, but it's more
Yeah,
than
in a way.
that. There's affect associated with it. That's the problem, you know? And that's where injury takes place, so to speak. So it's like, it's really interesting because it's like an imagined othering that goes both ways, except on the one end, from the female side, there are greater expectations. And I was just thinking, like, Minju should have taken this even further and just said, all of these girls are lesbians because those those Korean dramas were written by women. And hello, you're just like, this is a woman's fantasy that you're striving for. You guys are dykes. Y'all
Yeah.
are lesbians.
It really is a female fantasy, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a queering. This is a queering moment. So I'm like, Minju, you should have taken it there. Like, that would have been like, yes, get weird. Take that to the Korean Street Cultures Conference.
One step too far.
Exactly. Be an American.
I love it. I
Be
love
a
it. Be an
patriot.
American.
Yes, take it all the way, you know?
I love it.
Because I was just kicking back and I was like, these girls want a Korean man, but they don't want a Korean man. They want a Korean man
Yeah.
imagined by a Korean woman. All
Yeah,
of these
yeah.
men were constructed by Korean women's minds. So y'all are lesbians. Embrace it, you queer young dykes. Go to Korea and like just put a wig on these guys because they're, you know, what you want is an imagined, you know, yeah, like a female fantasy. So that's where she should have taken it, in my opinion. Yeah, but it's fun. Yeah.
Very good. I like it. I like it. Refreshing.
you.
Refreshing.
Yeah, let's refresh. Let's always refresh. Yes. Thank you. It's great having you.
Yeah, so we'll be in touch. Well, I'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah. For next week, I'm going to talk about Itaewon Class, which pretty much everybody's seen during the pandemic. I remember going on TikTok and just seeing that like literally every single person was watching Itaewon Class. So yeah, I'll be talking about that show. And folks, if you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube to K-Drama School. Please follow K-Drama School on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Email me if you have questions, right? So far, literally nobody's emailed me. The only people who email me are like, I don't know, like this site called Popcorn. They keep telling me to like do sponsorships, and I'm like, no, it just doesn't sound like it's worth it. Dude, if you want to sponsor the show, you can, all right? If there's something you want to sell, I will do it. I hate this whole commercialized capitalist society that we live in, but I will do it. Okay? If you want to sponsor the show, I will fucking eat it up. If you want to sell used panties, I will sell them. I will sell the shit out of them. Okay? Just fucking email me. Just reach out. Okay? So that is all for now, and I will see you all